Alright, hello everybody. My name is Caleb Polk, and today I'll be presenting to you making ethical decisions. Okay? So, before I start, we're going to go through a scenario just to kind of get your minds working and to get you guys thinking about ethical decisions. So, here's the story, and imagine yourselves in the place of the character. You're at a camp, and there are clay pits at this camp. It's a small valley, big place, small valley, filled with a bunch of red clay deposits. They get really slippery when it's wet, but even when it's not wet, they're kind of slick. And the scouts like to go and play in these clay pits because they're really fun. You throw clay at each other, you slip around. It's a lot of really good times. But the clay pits are off limits because they're dangerous. All the adults have banned it. It's in the camp rules. You're not allowed to go to the clay pits. But a bunch of people do anyways. They're teenage boys, girls, everyone. Not much for banging rules. So your friends decide to go to the clay pits. You're sitting in the camp, no adults are around, so they invite you. You have three choices. You can either go with them and have the time of your life, you can stay at camp and read the book you're enjoying, or you can go tell the adults and follow the camp rules. So if you do the first option and go with your friends, please step over to this side of the room. If you do the second option and stay at camp and read your book, stay in the middle, or come to the middle. And if you do the third option and go tell the adults, please come to this side of the room. Okay? You got like 1 minute to separate. Go.
I think I'd probably stay here.
Alright? Everybody good? Now, I want you guys to discuss why you chose where you went to, how you chose which decision. So go back to your patrols, discuss for maybe 1 minute or less why you chose to do any of the decisions. Okay? Now that you guys have had some time to discuss, what are some of the reasons you chose to go one way or the other?
Well, I wouldn't want to do the wrong thing, but I also wouldn't want to tattle on my friends.
Alright, so kind of a neutral position. I'll write that up on the board, which I do have here, even though you can't see it, new technology. Anyone else?
I just did nothing. I didn't want to look like a square, but also didn't want to be a snitch either.
Alright, so you both chose the same thing. Did your friends' decisions have anything to do with why you chose what you did? If a lot of friends were going to one location, did you choose to follow them? Was that an effective?
It was a draw.
It was a draw. It's tempting, but
Okay.
I still like to follow the rules. So
That's good.
yeah.
Okay, so peer pressure does play a part in our decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so can anyone tell me the mission statement of the Boy Scouts of America?
Do a good turn daily.
That's the slogan.
Nope.
I'll pull it up for you. Someone read that for me, please.
Mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and Law.
Alright, so a large part of that mission statement, everyone know what a mission statement is, right? Okay, somebody give me a definition of mission statement.
Your purpose for existing?
Close. A mission statement is something that normally a company or an organization has. Given that hint, can anyone tell me a better definition?
An idea that guides your company's decisions.
Right. So a mission statement is the main goal of a company or an organization. And this is the BSA's mission statement. It's pretty significant that making ethical and moral choices is part of our mission statement. It's right up there in front. So since making ethical choices is part of our mission statement, it stands to reason that we should probably know how to do that since it's right up there in front. But before we figure out how to make ethical choices, we have to define them. So let's start with the easy one. What are choices?
A or B.
Decisions you can make?
right?
Options
Choices
you
or
have?
decisions. Basically, a choice is when you have a couple different options and you have to decide on which path you're going to follow. Now for the more tricky one. What does ethical mean?
Right and wrong.
Okay.
Good and bad.
Yeah. What word does ethical come from? What's the base word for that?
Ethics.
Ethics, yeah. So, what are ethics?
What's right and what's wrong?
All right.
Principles that guide what's right and what's wrong.
Are ethics universal? Are you necessarily going to have the same ethics as the person sitting next to you?
No, your standards of behavior.
Okay. Standards for who specifically?
Generally for yourself, and in theory, what you think everybody else should do as well.
All right. So you've got personal ethics. Do groups have certain ethics that they adhere to as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Boy Scouts do.
All right.
We have ours.
So ethics are an understanding of what is right and wrong for individuals, as you said, and also groups of people. They're the standards by which we act, both when we're alone and when we're around others. But it's when we're alone that our true ethics really come out. So think about that. But where do ethics come from? Why do we have them in the first place?
So you have order in society?
Yeah, so people can work together, so they can trust each other.
Because God told you that's what you're supposed to do.
All right, yeah, if you're religious, it can be in your religious book or other writings and teachings. Where do we get our ethics from, though? We know the purpose for ethics. They help us work together and build trust. But who helps influence, or what helps influence, the making of our ethical structures?
Mom and Dad,
Right, family,
my pastor.
friends.
Government?
Yeah, society can often play a large role in how we develop our ethics. Good. So, does anyone recognize these words up here? Somebody read that for me.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
All right, good. Anybody know where that comes from?
Says it's from the Declaration of Independence.
It's right there on the board. Good job. Anyone know where in the Declaration of Independence?
Preamble.
Close. It's the second paragraph. All right? So, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For American citizens, this is a code of ethics. These rights are things that they take for granted, things that are assumed for them. It's their ethical code, so not only what they're required to do, what they're supposed to do, but also what they get. So, it's part of Americans' shared ethic. The entire country has a general sense of ethics. And while each person or each group within the country may have a slightly different viewpoint on what these mean, this is a standard ethical code for the entire country. And many countries have the same thing. What about schools? You guys have codes of conduct at your schools?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, and they function basically the same way as ethical codes. What are some points of your school codes of conduct? Anybody remember any of them?
Don't swear.
Alright. And what's the purpose of that? Why would that be a rule?
It would offend others. It's rude.
Alright. It's distracting. Anything else?
Treat people with respect.
Yeah, that's a good one. A little broad, but that encompasses a lot of things.
No
Respect is
bullying.
good. No bullying.
No drugs.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, the school has the rule, whether or not.
Yeah. Okay.
No smoking on campus.
No drinking.
Right. So, both the Declaration of Independence and the school codes of conduct, they all have this shared description of what right and wrong should look like, of what ethical decisions should look like. So if we didn't have those, what would happen?
Anarchy, crime.
Basically, it makes it much harder to function as a society.
People do what they wanted to do, regardless of what's going on in Ferguson right now. People
Yeah,
just do
the
it.
riots that are coming up. Because everybody's kind of questioning their ethics because things have happened that are against what they believe is ethical, and they're revolting against that. Good. So, ethics serve to allow us to have trust in each other. If you know that the person you're interacting with has a code of ethics that is similar to yours, then you know that you can at least partially trust them to do the right thing. Whereas if nobody had any codes of ethics, you would never know when your buddy was going to turn around and stab you in the back. So they help all of us function as a society and work together in the world. Alright, good. So, anybody know what the Boy Scout ethics are?
Is
Do we have any sort of code of conduct?
A scout is loyal, a scout is trustworthy.
Scout law.
Respectful, clean.
I won't have you suffer through all of them.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got the Scout law. Anything else?
On my honor, I will do my duty.
Scout oath, good. What about, anybody know about the outdoor code?
I can never remember that one.
Leave nothing. Take nothing but pictures.
That's part of Leave No Trace. The outdoor code is slightly different. We won't go over that now, we don't have time. But the Boy Scouts do have a couple different documents and articles that are our codes of conduct, our ethics. The Scout Oath, the Scout Law, the Scout Slogan, the Scout Motto, and a couple others.
Okay, what's the motto?
The motto is be prepared.
Right, be prepared.
I was prepared for that question. Gotcha. Alright. So, the old Boy Scout handbooks talked a lot about knights and chivalry, and the code of chivalry that the knights would pledge themselves to. It was an ethical code.
Did we get swords?
No, weapons aren't allowed in Boy Scouts, and Girl Scouts, and Adventure, and all that. We specifically only use tools, but that's a discussion for later. So they talked about knights and chivalry and this code of honor that knights would pledge themselves to, which included things such as defending those who couldn't defend themselves, upholding honor, upholding doing the right thing, and pledging allegiance to a lord of some sort, a noble. And so, just like knights, as Boy Scouts and Venture Scouts, we pledge ourselves to these codes of conduct. It's not just something that we think is a good idea. When you put on the Boy Scout uniform, when you say the oath and law, you're not just saying you should or you might. You're saying you will follow these principles and represent the BSA as a scouter who is fully prepared to make ethical and moral decisions. And part of that is this module, helping you guys figure out just exactly what that is. The Boy Scout handbooks went on to discuss the codes of conduct that the Boy Scouts pledge themselves to, like we just discussed. Now, there aren't really any knights in armor anymore today, and we do a lot of communication on the internet now. I'm pretty sure, suits of chainmail didn't have Wi-Fi or anything like that. So we do a lot of our communication in a way that didn't really exist in the old Boy Scout days when we were founded about 100 years ago. But if you go onto the website of the Boy Scouts of America National Council, you will read this. Okay? Somebody want to read that for me?
The ideals of Boy Scouting are spelled out in the Scout Oath, the Scout Law, the Scout Motto, and the Scout Slogan. The Boy Scout measures himself against these ideals and continually tries to improve. The goals are high, and as he reaches for them, he has some control over what and who he becomes.
Alright. So even though knights in shining armor have basically disappeared from our worldview, they no longer exist, this message that he just read has been the same from the old Boy Scout handbooks to now. It's changed slightly, the wording has changed slightly as our language develops, but the basic message has remained the same for over a century. Remember, our 100th anniversary was about 4 years ago, give or take, in 2010. So this ethical code has lasted for over a century. That probably means it's sound, that people agree that this is a good code of ethics, it's a good moral standard that people follow, since we haven't changed it very much. So what are some reasons for being ethical? Everyone agrees that this is a good ethical code. So why be ethical? We've already discussed that it helps build trust and things like that. But why would you decide to be ethical?
Makes my life clear.
Right? You've got guidelines.
Self-respect, honor to God and my family.
Helps you live with yourself and others.
Other people respect me.
Yeah, it's hard to have respect when you don't have a ethical code to follow. But what about not being ethical? People choose to disobey or ignore their ethical codes all the time. What are the reasons for that?
They want to do what they want to do or get what they want to get.
Yeah, selfish gain. Anything else?
They don't want to look weird in front of their friends.
Yeah, if you've got a different moral code or ethical code from other people, sometimes it can be hard to follow that because even your close friends will not agree with some of the decisions you make. And at that point, you've got to decide whose ethical code you're going to follow, yours or your peers. And that's a hard decision sometimes. Alright? We're going to watch a video that explains some ethical decisions. And I'm going to skip it for the purposes of this presentation. Alright? So now we're going to answer some questions. Just to go over, the video went over the 3 basic types of decisions. Trivial decisions, right versus wrong, and right versus right. So we're going to answer some questions about those now. First question is...
I would review what those are.
Alright.
Even after the video.
So trivial decisions are decisions that are very clear what's going to happen. Like, I could decide to put this down, and decide to pick it up, and decide to close the laptop, open it. These are trivial decisions. It's very obvious what the consequences are going to be. I could decide to throw this at someone or not. That's a trivial decision. I know what's going to happen. So trivial decisions are mostly, actually for the most part, totally, very clear. It's very obvious what will happen when you choose to act upon a trivial decision. And right versus right are similar. You often understand the consequences, but it can be more tempting to go with a wrong decision. So for right versus wrong decisions, consult your ethical code, consult the Boy Scout motto and law, and oath, and all the others that we have, and choose the right decision from your ethical code. And then we've got right versus right, which, as he said, is the hardest. And when we've got right versus right decisions, definitely go back to the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, our codes of conduct, and make sure that you know what decision is best for you. And right versus right decisions, even the same decision, will have different outcomes for different people, because our ethical codes do vary even when we're following the Scout Oath and Law slightly. So for right versus right decision, do what you find is the best answer for the situation. Okay? So we're going to go through some examples of trivial right versus wrong decisions, and I'll see if you guys can figure out which one these decisions are. So here's the first one. Somebody read that out loud.
Travis has a lot of homework but decides to play video games. When his mother asks him if he has any homework to do, he thinks about what he should say. He wants to keep playing video games for a while longer. What kind of decision is this?
Alright.
B, right
versus wrong.
Okay. And normally the computer will vocalize this, but the speakers are having a little trouble. So you guys got that one right. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to skip the rest of them.
I don't think you can, actually.
Okay, we'll just go through them quickly.
Marcus Rick leaves. He's promised his dad he will have front yard clean. 6-year-old girl crying. Right versus right.
Right versus right, okay. Good job.
You can't hurry it up, any. Just get on until next.
Alright. Next one. I'll read this one. Rashid is getting dressed for school, and he's trying to decide whether to wear a long sleeve shirt or a short sleeve shirt. What kind of decision is this?
Trivial.
Trivial, okay. Gotta hurry through these. Good job. The money Jared earns at his part-time job after school really helps his mom pay the bills each month, but lately his younger brother has started getting into trouble. Jared wonders whether he should work fewer hours so that he can spend more time with his brother.
Right versus right.
Right versus right. Good job. Nobody has any questions about these, right? You seem to be whizzing through them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
How many kids earn money to help their parents pay their bills? Impressive.
Gary has lots of free time one Sunday. He doesn't know what to do first. Read the mystery book he just got from the library, or go outside and ride a skateboard.
Trivial.
Trivial, yeah. Although if it were me, it'd be right versus wrong, because I can't ride a skateboard to save my life. Definitely go with the book for me. Alright. Todd is walking to the basketball court with his friends when an old man with a cane calls out to them, asking if they can help him find his granddaughter's house. The other boys want to get to the court before someone else does. What kind of decision is this?
Right
versus wrong.
Right versus wrong, good. Always help the old people.
Good.
There's one in back right now. Todd is walking to the basketball court with his friends.
You clicked the...
We already got this one. Well then.
You clicked the wrong one. It's right versus wrong.
My mistake. There we go. Nobody has any questions about these? You're good?
No.
Alright. So, to make ethical decisions, there are a couple steps you have to follow. And the first is to get your facts straight. Just like any other type of decision, or choice, or really anything you have to do, you always want to get the facts straight first. That's always the first step. Because if you don't understand what you're getting into, you can often make mistakes, make the wrong decision, do something that ends up causing more trouble later on. So always get the facts straight. Step 2 is kind of a follow-up to getting the facts straight. Once you understand what's happening, you can decide what kind of choice you're faced with. A trivial, a right versus wrong, and a right versus right. So, we're going to do a little activity here before we continue, just to kind of get you up and moving, cement these in your mind. So everyone stand up, okay? So we've got 3 decision options. Trivial, right versus wrong, and right versus right. So to help you memorize these, we're going to do a little dance. So follow along. First one is going to be trivial, okay? You're going to go like this. Ready? Trivial! Everybody follow along. Trivial!
Trivial.
Okay. Next one is right versus right. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Right versus right. Right versus
versus
right.
right.
Good job. And the last one,
I like this one.
you can stop now. Good dancing though.
Thank you.
The next one is right versus right. You ready? Right versus right.
Right versus right.
Okay. Now just make sure you got them. I'm going to stop. And I'm going to say one of the options. And you have to do the corresponding motion, okay?
Alright.
Ready? Right versus wrong.
Right
versus wrong.
Okay? Right versus right.
Right versus right.
Trivial.
Trivial.
Trivial. Trivial. Trivial.
Trivial.
Alright, I just did that to see you guys shake around. You look ridiculous. Sit back down and get back to it. Alright? So we've got the 3 decision types. Trivial, right versus wrong, and right versus right. Let's go through some examples real quick. Anybody have an example of a trivial decision?
Have toast or cereal for breakfast.
Okay, that works. There's some people, I guess, that'd be a right versus wrong if you don't like toast, but for the most part that's trivial. Okay, anything else?
Jeans or slacks.
Alright, same thing applies. Depends on personal preference. What about right versus wrong?
Skip school versus go to school.
Yeah, that's definitely a right versus wrong. You should not skip school unless you've got a very good legal reason to do so. So, yeah, I hope none of us are skipping school terribly often. Probably won't say that in the actual thing. Alright, so once you've gotten your facts straight and you know what kind of decision you're faced with, there's a basic checklist that you can go through to figure out the right course of action. And we've got with us this handy dandy, if I can find it, checklist for ethical decision making. So I'm going to pass this out to you. You guys, look at that, go over it. Okay? So there are 3 areas of the ethical decisions checklist. The first are the B checks. This is the questions addressing who am I being? What am I representing as myself when I do a certain action? So the B checks are if we can actually get the slide going. The B checks are, does it conform with the Scout Oath and Law? Or am I being a scout by doing this? Is it legal? Am I being obedient? Are you following the ethical codes and the laws that the area has set down? Am I being brave? And does it conform with the Golden Rule? For any of you who don't know the Golden Rule, that's do to other people as you want them to do to you. Treat others like you want them to treat you. Alright? So that's the B checks. Who are you being when you make these decisions? The next are the no checks. Know the consequences and what's going to happen if you choose a certain decision. The no checks are, will this choice help me build trust with others? Which is a very good indicator of if it's an ethical decision, because ethical codes exist partly to enable us to trust each other. Does it allow me to remain loyal to my values and to others? So, are you being a good friend, a good family member, a good neighbor by doing these? Someone read the third one.
Does making my choice compromise my religious beliefs?
Alright. Religion is always something to take into account if you have a religion. That factors into a large part of your ethical decisions. Could you read the fourth one?
Am I being helpful?
Alright. It's another part of the Scout Law and Oath, being helpful. Okay, and you read the last one, please.
From there, here, the paper.
From the slide.
Are my actions friendly, courteous, cheerful, and kind?
Alright. More things from the Scout Oath and Law. So that's what you know is happening. The final one, the final checks you have to go through, are the do checks. And this is, what am I enacting by making these decisions? The do checks include, am I performing my duty to God and my country, which we all pledge ourselves to in the Scout Oath. You guys all remember that, the first part of the Scout Oath? Mm-hmm. Okay. Read the second one, please.
Does this choice help me stay physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight?
Alright. If you can see, most, if not all of these checks are derived from the Scout Oath and Law. So it's really not that difficult to go through the checklist if you know the Scout Oath and Law by heart. So if you don't have this checklist on you and you don't have it memorized, just go back to the Oath and Law, go back to our ethical code, and compare your decision with that. This is just kind of a way to flesh out exactly what you should be doing. Someone read the last one, please.
Does it conform to the principles of the outdoor code?
Alright, that's something not all of us know, but it is a good one to remember. That's another part of our ethical code. So, the ethical decision checklist is basically just an expansion of what we should be asking ourselves through our ethical code. It's not that hard. You guys all have to memorize at least part of this to be scouts. So this checklist is really nothing new. It's just kind of a tool to help you remember what to do. I'm going to watch another video that fleshes out the checklist and decisions and peer pressure. I'm going to skip this video for time's sake. Oh. So, at one point, the narrator in the video said, "What you do speaks so loudly I can't hear what you're saying," which is a rephrasing of the common expression, actions speak louder than words. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard that. So our actions speak louder than words. But words, what about the words of our friends? How did those affect us?
Pretty strongly.
Yeah.
We discussed in the first scenario that our other people's decisions affected our own, and we have already discussed somewhat that peer pressure can lead us to disobey our ethical decisions. So peer pressure, what other people say, what they do, and what they tell or encourage you to do, plays a big part in our ethical decision-making process. And we have to be careful that our friends are not encouraging us to go against our ethical codes. Alright, we're going to test out the checklist. I want you guys all to go back to the clay pit scenario I presented at the beginning, where you've got the 3 choices to go with your friends to the clay pit, to stay at camp, or to go tell the adults. And go through the checklist and decide on an answer for the scenario based on the checklist. You've got 5 minutes. Alright. Now that you've had some time to look over that, what are some of the decisions you've come to after looking through the checklist, and are they different from the ones you originally made?
Well, you definitely clear that it wouldn't be right to go to the clay pits.
Right.
That's clearly
And
stated.
what about staying at camp? What's the difference between staying at camp and going and telling one of the adults? It seems like a right versus right. So what's the catch?
I think the right thing would be to try to convince the friends not to go and do the wrong thing.
Alright, that's not an option I presented, but that's definitely one that you could choose, and it's good that you're bringing those up, because sometimes the answers presented to you may not be the only choices, so it's good that you're thinking outside of the box like that. Anything else? Well, that about wraps it up for me. We're just going to go over some quick points, make sure you all get it. Remember when we discussed the mission statement that making ethical choices is at the heart, at the core of what we as Boy Scouts and Venture Scouts look to do. It's a main part of our goal, which we've discussed a lot during this course. Your goals, your visions, making ethical decisions is a big part of that. And the first step to making ethical decisions is, of course, what?
Get your
facts straight.
Get your facts straight. Know what you're getting into. Because if you don't know what's happening, you don't know what to do. What's the second point of making ethical decisions? What's the second step?
Knowing what kind of a decision it is.
Right. And what are the 3 types of decisions?
Trivial, right versus wrong, right versus right.
Alright. The actions for a trivial decision. Anyone want to give that a shot? Not that action. What you do for a trivial decision. But I like the dance.
Thank you.
Good for you remembering.
Doesn't really matter.
Just choose what you know is right. For trivial decisions, it's pretty obvious and normally pretty easy. What about right versus wrong? What's the course of action you take for that?
The right.
You get your facts straight. Remember the Scout oath, the Scout law, the Scout motto,
Alright?
outdoor code, and those various things.
So do what you know is right. For right versus wrong decisions, even though it may be a little harder to choose, normally the right choice will still be obvious. So just do what you know is right. And sometimes it's hard, but that's why we're here, to teach you guys how to make these hard decisions. And then finally, while we're talking about hard stuff, right versus right decisions. How do you deal with those?
Think about the Scout law, the Scout oath.
Same
Right.
list. And then add the be, no, do checks
Good.
to see if one maybe is more important at the time than another.
Alright? So right versus right, we said they're trickier, but following the same checklist and looking at your own ethical standards, those of your family, those of your friends, those that you follow along with the Scout Oath and Law, will help you make the best right versus right decision. Okay? That's all I have. You guys have been great. Thanks for participating. Any questions that I didn't answer already?
No?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. It's been awesome.
Cool.